The Restrain Condition is game-changing. It's an impactful effect that does three things: drops the creature's speed to 0, gives attacking creatures attack advantage against the restrained creature, and gives the creature disadvantage on attack rolls and dexterity saving throws. I'll quickly cover the main ways of causing the Restrain Condition as a player in D&D 5e, before turning to how to make use of the effect tactically. There are several ways for players to cause the Restraining Condition in Dungeons & Dragons, from throwing nets to tying knots, but spells are by far the most common way of causing it. 17 spells cause the Restrain Condition, ranging from 1st to 9th level. Most of these spells involve a strength or dexterity saving throw to resist, and a strength or dexterity ability check to break free from. Only 2 spells can get you out of the Restrain Condition: the 4th level of Freedom of Movement, and the 3rd level Speak with Plants, which only works if you're being restrained by the Entangle spell. Another easy way to cause the Restrain Condition is with the Net Weapon. This special martial ranged weapon restrains your creature that you land an attack on. You can only make 1 attack per turn with the net, even if you have extra attack, and its range is limited to 15 feet. A creature can break free from the net with a DC 10 strength check or by dealing 5 slashing damage to it, which also destroys it. Another way of causing the Restrain Condition is with the Grappler feat. With this feat, you can make a second grapple check when you're already grappling a creature. If you succeed, you and the creature are both restrained. Note that this is widely regarded as one of the worst feats in 5e, but it is a way of causing the Restrain Condition. You can also cause the condition just by tying a knot. The game's rules for tying knots are pretty well spelled out, and although they don't explicitly mention the Restrain Condition, most DMs will rule that a tied-up creature is effectively restrained. Of course, most DMs will also require that a creature be unconscious or at least stunned in order to even attempt tying them up. There are also 2 subclass features that can cause the Restrain Condition: the Nature's Wrath Channeled Affinity of an Ancient Paladin, and the Fire Rune of a Rune Knight Fighter. Not exactly a deep list. Other than that, there are a handful of magic items that can restrain enemies. Alright, so those are the many ways of causing the Restrain Condition as a player. Now let's turn to a few tips for making great use of the Restrain Condition in-game. Tip number 1 is to set up big combos. The most obvious example of this is something like the Entangle Fireball combination. First, you restrain a big group of creatures with Entangle, then you Fireball them. And they have disadvantage on their dex save. Even if you're not doing something on such a large scale, setting everyone up with attack advantage opens up the door for things like easy sneak attacks for rogues and more critical strike chances for Divine Smiting paladins. Tip number 2 is to use the Restrain Condition to keep enemies at bay. This is a pretty obvious application in general, but it's an important one with many different uses. For instance, keeping an enemy or group of enemies out of a fight while your party deals with a different threat, or preventing foes from reaching item, NPC, or objective. To make the most of this, prioritize restraining enemies who don't have a range attack option or a spell casting option. Even though they'll have disadvantage on attack rolls, it's more effective to prevent 100% of damage rather than reduce it. My next tip on why the Restrain Condition is so good is that it allows you to win the action economy. Many of the spells and effects that cause the Restrain Condition require an action to break free from, usually a strength or a dexterity check that has a chance of failing. Every time an enemy makes this choice, they're wasting a valuable turn in combat. The more often you can put enemies in a rock and a hard place, like choosing between A, dealing subpar damage and being defensively weaker, or B, wasting an entire turn, the better. As a sub-tip here, I want to point out that this choice is less significant for creatures that rely on saving throw-based abilities, which suffer from no offensive disadvantage while restrained. My final tip is for players who want to build a character who focuses on restraining enemies. It's a simple tip, and that's be a class with lots of restraining spells. The Grappler feat is bad, and the net is hard to use consistently and sports a ridiculously low DC to break free from. Your best bet for a character that can provide support via restrain effects is to be a spellcaster. The effect is most commonly associated with Druids, who have 8 restraining spells, and Rangers, who have 4. The important spell that they both have access to is Entangle, the first level 20 square foot restrain effect that's one of the most powerful low-level spells in the game. Wizards technically have access to the most restraining spells in the 5th edition, 13 in all, but they don't have the incredibly powerful Entangle spell. Although they still do have the 2nd level Web spell, which is also fantastic. Sorcerers also have access to Web and a good range of other restraining spells, while Artificers just have Web. Bards and Warlocks only have access to a few high-level restraining spells each, and Clerics and Paladins have no such spells on their class spell lists. Those are just a few tips for making the most out of the Restrain Condition in D&D 5e. Now I'm going to quickly clear up a few misconceptions about how the condition works. Rule number 1 is that a restrained creature's movement can be forced. While their movement speed is 0, a spell like Thunderwave or Thornwhip can still be used to force a restrained creature's movement. This may break them free of the Restrain Condition, as with the Web spell, but with spells like Entangle or Ensnaring Strike, a restrained creature remains restrained even if they're pulled away from the initial area of the spell. Note that a spell like Dissonant Whispers or Fear cannot force a restrained creature to move, because these spells rely on the creature using their own movement speed, which is 0 while they're restrained. Rule number 2 is that a restrained creature can still teleport. Having 0 movement speed doesn't prevent you from teleport spells or ability, and if teleporting away from the effect also ends the Restrain Condition, then this frees a creature as well. Note that this isn't limited to teleport effects. Any ability that allows you to move without actually using your movement speed can be used while restrained, like a Storm Sorcerer's Tempestuous Magic. Rule number 3 is that the Restrained Condition doesn't prevent spellcasting. Usually. The Restrained Condition has no direct effect on a spellcaster's ability to cast spells. However, if a spell requires a somatic component and the spellcaster's hands are both restrained, they cannot cast that spell. So basically, it's up to the DM to determine the nature of the restraints and whether they would prevent a creature from moving its arms. And my final rules clarification is that a prone creature cannot stand up while restrained, because standing requires half a creature's movement speed and a restrained creature's movement speed is 0. Those are the big rules questions I see come up around the Restrained Condition often, but let me know if I missed one. As a bonus Dungeon Master tip, DMs also have plenty of environmental effects and monsters at their disposal if they'd like to tie players down with the Restrained Condition. And I'm sure you can dream up plenty of your own as well. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this guide on the Restrained Condition helpful and can show your appreciation with a like and subscribe. It's a massive help for small YouTubers like me. If you have any stories about using the Restrained Condition in your own Dungeons & Dragons games or questions about the condition's rules, please share them in the comments below. This is D&D Lounge wishing you the best of luck in your next adventure.